this, but
cool. So I'll just press continue. Yay!
hello. My name is Sabina Sadecka. I'm a book lover and a book reader, first of all, and I'm an acceptance and commitment therapy trainer. That's my job, and I am really honored to have you here with me and with us, Mary Welford. I read your book, which was recently translated into Polish, and I'm so excited to have you here and to listen about you, about compassion, about compassionate mind, and about like how compassion changed your life. And I would ask you if you would like to tell something about yourself. Like, of course, I know who you are, but maybe it's better for our listeners and people who will watch that you will like present yourself. Could you tell a little bit, like who you are, what you do?
So I am a clinical psychologist, and I live in the south of England, although I was born in the north of England. And I work across the age span, kind of like with, a range of different, kind of like individuals and a range of different difficulties that people have. And you don't work in the job long before you realize that there's so much similarity, so much actually, similar difficulties that we face, similar ways that sometimes we relate to ourselves, but it might come up as anxiety, or it might come up as low mood, or it might come up as certain behaviors and things. But there's these common strands which often are to do with how we talk to ourselves and how we feel about ourselves. So as a clinical psychologist, that led me to work with compassion, because it just seems as a great antidote to that. So if we can develop compassion for ourselves, compassion for others, experience compassion, actually, that's beneficial to us. And I'm a mum of 2 boys, and I live near the beach, which is really cool. And yeah, I get very excited about sharing the ideas that have meant so much in my personal life, because along the way I realized that in learning how to be of assistance to others, I actually learnt a helpful way of relating to myself as well. So so that's the reason why I'm passionate about it.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, because that's what I'm experiencing right now, that we cannot really be a good therapist or a psychologist if we don't use the same approach towards ourselves.
Yeah.
In your bio, I read that you were, maybe you still are, a CBT therapist, cognitive behavioral therapist, and I'm really interested about this, your evolution as a therapist or as a psychologist, from CBT to CFT, and CFT means compassion focused therapy, and this compassionate mind approach, which is described here, which is like amazing. How was it for you? If it's okay for you to share, if not, we'll go.
100%. So I trained on a clinical psychology course that was very CBT, so very cognitive behavioral. And you were kind of like, you could do cognitive work, you could do behavioral work, or you could do cognitive behavior work. So it was very CBT, and I qualified loving CBT. And I started to go into research, where we ran lots of trials. So people who experienced low mood, people who experienced worry, people who had PTSD, using CBT. And a significant amount of people did very well. But I became really interested in those, how do we help, or how do we be assistance, or how do we adapt things for people who it didn't help. So there was quite a considerable amount of people who were benefiting from CBT, but there were some people who were saying, intellectually, I understand it, but emotionally, I feel no different. So intellectually, I know I'm not a bad person. Intellectually, I know I'm loved. Intellectually, I know that my worry can't kill, can't kill other people, can't kill myself, etc. Intellectually, I understand these things, but I don't feel any different. So there's that group of people. There was another group of people who did very well on CBT. So they did very well at challenging their thoughts and they felt better. But in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months follow-up, they would be back to square one. So this was the question: when CBT is effective, it is very effective for people.
Yeah.
But what do we do when people say intellectually, I get it, emotionally, I feel different, or have relapses? And there seem to be some common denominators. So often people just didn't feel okay about themselves, and they were talking to themselves in a condemning, criticizing, negative way, and would even talk about therapy, how they were doing in therapy in a critical way, like, in between session, if they'd said, I'm going to do this, they'd come back next time and be really negative towards themselves because they hadn't done it, or because it hadn't gone so well. So that led me to thinking, led me to the work of Paul Gilbert, who was working predominantly with individuals with high levels of shame, high levels of self-criticism. And his therapy at the time was called CBT, for shame and self-criticism. But then along the way, people started to say, what are you doing differently? What are you doing differently for people who don't do so well at classic CBT, or, high levels of shame? And he kind of said, well, we're focusing on compassion. We're focusing on a compassionate relationship with themselves and with other people, etc. And there was the birthplace of the term compassion focused therapy. And I think along the way, I still will write myself little agendas. I still at times challenge my thoughts. I still at times do behavioral experiments. So I still personally practice some of the elements of CBT, but it's the CFT that's changed things very significantly for me, in a way that I'm no longer beating myself up, putting myself down, undermining myself. I'm able to look at things and not dress them up, not say to myself, I'm doing brilliantly all the time. After today, I will reflect and I will think, oh, what could I have done differently? What might I have said? But the tone in which I'm talking to myself is different. It's more supportive and forward looking rather than backward looking.
Yeah. Wow, wonderful. I found these elements of CBT also in this book, because at the end of these books, there are some chapters about thoughts, about the planning your goals.
Yeah.
So I think it's exactly how you describe it, that this approach is showed here. Well, and you were telling us about therapy as an intellectual process sometimes.
Yeah.
And when I was reading your book, I had this thought that, being intellectual about my thoughts, my feelings, is safer than this experiential work and feeling. And I would like to ask you, it's not an easy question, I know it, but how to how to invite people who are afraid of their feelings and afraid of, because compassion is about being in a deep connection with my own feelings, and how to do it with people who are totally afraid of their own internal behaviors, their own feelings. Because when I was reading this book, I thought of many of my clients who would tell me, it's dangerous to be too much in touch with your fears, with your shame. It's just too dangerous. I will never do it, because the only thing I want to do with my anxiety, shame, anger, is to, push it away. What's the starting point to, start this process of learning how to feel?
Yeah, I mean, there's many different ways, and it would depend on the individual and, the relationship and things. But to me, it always starts with recognizing that avoidance is understandable.
Mm-hmm.
Intellectualizing things is understandable. It makes sense. It makes sense. And I'd be one who would say, I don't want the feelings either. Kind of like I'm with that. And then it's about leaving space for people to start to discuss what the drawbacks of that are, how it's impacting on their life, how it's difficult. And really, it is a therapy that's all about blocks. It's all about the difficulties that we have. It's all about, instead of pathologizing the blocks, it's understandable.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be looking at somebody's history and saying, that was really important for you when you were growing up to push something away and to know. But as we sit here now, so in my, I'd be slowing myself down. As we sit here now, what clearly it's having a negative impact on you. And I suppose slowly then thinking about what might you need to do that work. And if somebody is saying absolutely not, absolutely not, absolutely not, it's about respecting where somebody's at and saying, okay, so how might we work? What might we do? But in the conversation, there starts to be emotion. So my sessions are quite emotional, even if we're talking about, what's happened at work that week and how difficult it was. So we're starting to very slowly warm things up and connect with the emotion. But first and foremost, it's about talking about the benefits, about the drawbacks, and hopefully, kind of thinking about what might you need to do that work. But if somebody says, actually, I'm not ready, it's not the right time for me. So I remember after my dad dying, people saying to me, do you want to talk about it? How are you doing? Are you okay? And it wasn't the right time for me. The trauma of the loss for quite a while afterwards was something I went into quite a practical kind of like getting on with things, sorting things out, etc. But then when I was ready and I had people around me, I then started to grieve. So it's there is something about timing is important. And if somebody had have said to me, kind of like, you haven't grieved yet, I'd have said, no, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to let go. I'm not ready to let go of it all. I can't do it at the moment because I've got lots going on in my life and I need to keep going for a time. I need to sort through things. I need to do some practical stuff. And then when I'm ready, then I'll grieve.
Thank you for sharing that. I several times in your book you put the sentence, I will probably not quoting it rightly, but it was that your brain is not your fault, like your brain software is not your fault.
Yeah.
It's because the evolution, it evolved this way, and that's how I understand what you were saying before, that avoidance is not always bad.
No.
Well, we are made like this by evolution, by nature.
Yeah.
And I found it really powerful in your book that you describe it so, like, it was so easy to understand how our brain, helps us in some way, but also it's because of our brain we suffer a lot.
Yeah.
Is it like that you during CFT sessions or in this compassionate mind approach, you also use psychoeducation about how brain works? Is it like this?
Yeah, it can range.
Okay.
So in group work or in workshops, I might go into a lot of psychoeducation. So I might, a lot of it as the group settles, as, it's imparting information that is important for me and it's important for the people that I work with. So I share it, So if you know that it's important and it can be life-changing to know these things, then you begin to feel kind of an urge to share it. And that's why I love my job, because I have an opportunity to share these things. If I'm working individually, and quite often people will come and they will need to talk about certain things. So for me to go into kind of like teaching mode wouldn't be appropriate. So it might be more that I'm using language like when we get anxious or when we avoid, and I might share as, kind of like a little example from my personal life or something, so that there is this sense of this is all of us, and we do it rather than your anxiety, your worry, your trauma, so that's more subtle psychoeducation. It's we, it's us, it's me, it's you. And then when at the right time, I'm often saying to people, would it be helpful if I shared with you something that helps me understand myself and helps me understand other people and keeps popping into my mind as we're talking? So, and, usually people will say, yeah. And then I talk about, tricky brain and our evolved mind, first and foremost, checking out that the concept of evolution is something that, is okay to talk about, or that it's a shared understanding, but it's also respecting that a lot of people don't, so I might talk about our evolved brain. I might talk about, 3 circles, which is, kind of like a key part of CFT, and the fact that we have a threat system and we have a drive system, and then we have a soothing affiliative system, and it's about having them in balance. So, there's a key part of psychoeducation, or that we can get conditioned. So if we've had difficult things happen and had difficult relationships in the future might be tricky for us, because we either follow a similar pattern or we have unusual reactions to things that we can't understand. That's conditioning.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for where somebody is criticizing themselves or feeling shame, and then I'm using the science and personal experience and kind of like, you know, inquiry and reflections to hopefully address that, you know, kind of like that this is a common, these are common things. It's not just you, you know, and the science backs this up, you know, and so sometimes it's very light, sometimes it's quite a lot of that. It depends what somebody needs. You know, so one of the key bits of the science is, you know, the quality of the relationship that we have with ourselves predisposes us. You know, if we have a negative relationship with ourselves, if we're critical, undermining ourselves, loathing of ourselves, it predisposes us to mental health issues. It also maintains mental health issues, and it can be a big block in therapy. You know, so let's just have a think about that. You know, let's have a think about what you hope to get out of beating yourself up. And usually people want things to be better. People want to achieve, people want to be a good person, but they're criticizing themselves to achieve that. So the question is, would you be interested in learning an alternative way of relating to yourself, as talking to yourself, that has all the benefits, you know, kind of like, but doesn't have the drawbacks?
Yeah, especially for the topic that is described in this book, because it's not only about compassion, it's about self-confidence. How can self-compassion help you build your self-confidence? And I must admit that when I saw the title, I was like, aren't these totally different concepts? How are they in common? And that was a big surprise, how much they are connected, how much your self-confidence is built on your relationship with yourself. And I would like to ask you to, maybe if it's okay for you, to describe this link for people who haven't the opportunity to read your book, how it can be useful in building self-confidence.
So straight away, there's a little bit of history to this, because I was asked to write a book on self-esteem. So, and self-esteem is, you know, kind of like an evaluation of our worth often, you know, kind of like, and how I'm doing in comparison to you and you and you and you. Now, we've got to recognize that there are various different ways of looking at self-esteem, and there are some amazing ways, positive ways of looking at self-esteem. But in general, self-esteem has become, you know, in the media and in sometimes, unfortunately, in schools, it is how am I doing in relation to you and you and you? And if I'm feeling good, if I'm kind of like doing well, my self-esteem's good. And if I'm not doing so well, my self-esteem's bad. So self-esteem is good. And people who have high self-esteem are less prone to have anxiety and depression. But then what happens when things don't go so well? What happens when we get, you know, a bad mark at school, or we don't get picked for something, or we mess up, we really upset a close friend? You know, what happens then? Our self-esteem drops.
Yeah.
You know, so it's this kind of like thing that goes up and down, up and down. So I was asked to write a book on that, and that wasn't consistent with a compassion approach. Okay, so, you know, kind of like the worst case scenario would be people saying, you know, kind of like, I've just got to do really well at this compassion stuff, and then I'll feel really good, you know, if I'm really if I practice all of this mindfulness and this imagery, and I'll be brilliant. Self-esteem, great. You know, so I started talking to them about doing one on self-confidence. Now, to me, self-confidence does not mean that I'm brilliant at everything. You know, kind of like self-confidence means that I am a human being, first and foremost, and I will mess up and things won't go so well. But what is amazing is that I can reflect and I can think about things and I can make adjustments and I can, so, you know, yes, there are areas in my life that I feel, you know, kind of like that I do well. There are other areas that I am rubbish at, you know, kind of like really not great at. But feeling confident in myself, feeling as if, you know, I've got my own back. So it's confidence in myself that I have got my own back, and I, you know, I can go to key people, you know, as well. So it's not just a me thing. There are people who I can open up to and talk to. Now that also took me time, because my confidence growing up would have been low, that if I told you something about me that you wouldn't like me, you know, or it would expose my flaws and other people might take advantage or something. So it started off with me feeling a bit more confident, me having my own back. And then I was able to take a few more risks with other people. And I realized that, you know, sometimes, you know, things don't go so well. We open up to somebody and, you know, kind of like they take the mick, you know, kind of like they have a laugh on our behalf. But in actual fact, the majority of people we connect with. So it's how I relate to myself. It's being compassionate towards myself, that then I can feel confident in my ability, you know, kind of like it. As I say, it's not that I think I'm brilliant and amazing at everything, far from it. But I have a clear picture of myself, and I support myself in the areas that I need to work on. So self-confidence becomes more of a consequence of practicing self-compassion, you know, and it's something that then I can be in the world, take up my space in the world and be okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
that sounds really beautiful, that we are all human beings and we all suffer, we all do mistakes. That's what I found in your book. And I found it also extremely useful for me. Like a few years ago, I developed a severe anxiety disorder problem, and I realized that my self-confidence was really low at that time. That, you know, my relationship with myself was really like not very good. It was like, oh my gosh, probably I'm the only psychologist and psychotherapist in the whole world who has anxiety problems. And I think that compassion was the missing ingredient that helped me rebuild this the self-image of being just enough. Yeah. And when I was reading your book, I was just, you know, doing all the exercises, like not like 100% of them, but I was just, you know, using this book to see, is this, you know, my relationship with me being anxious is still so bad, or maybe it changed. And well, it changed, but it changed also because of reading this book and really, you know, training what you wanted me, your reader, to train. I love this part about training your brain. You even put a little chart, or in Polish version, it's a little chart of hours, like with a little counting. If you are 20 years old, 30 years old, 40 years old, and so on. So how many hours you spend on training your brain to think in some to act in some particular way. And I realized for me, it's about like 350 hours. So, and even this little chart was so refreshing for me. Okay, so if I was spending hundreds of hours training my brain to feel ashamed because I'm anxious or I feel weak, I will not change it in 1 week, 1 month, maybe in 1 year, maybe is enough. And right now I'm realizing that it's changing. It's my relationship with my weak part is much better. And so that's funny that it's all about the training. It's all about taking risks of seeing yourself differently. That's wonderful. That is wonderful about this book, that it gives you the opportunity to train yourself differently and to train yourself to have different type of relationship with yourself. But still, I found many people around me, not only my clients, being so cruel towards themselves. And part of this is our brain, but also part of this is our socialization, how we raise kids, how we teach kids in schools. Are there any, is it like compassion focused therapy and compassionate mind approach? Does it address also the social like goals, like putting a little bit of CFT in schools or in universities?
Well, before I come on to that, I would say, what's important to recognize is, you just sharing about your anxiety, that there is something about, I want to live in a society where we can say we all get anxious sometimes, and then our confidence drops. Even therapists, therapists have times where the mood really goes. Therapists can be traumatized, therapists can get angry, therapists, there is something, I'm so glad that I live in a time where we can talk about that, because to hear your story then makes me feel, kind of like, number one, compassion for you, but also there is this, none of us have to be perfect, and we all do struggle at times. And I always say, the day that I stopped learning about myself and realizing things about myself and struggling at times is, that'll be my last day on this earth. It's kind of, I often feel as if, I've overcome that now, that's been, and I'll work at myself on something, and then something else will come up, this is the human condition. And there's something about acceptance around that. There's something you mentioned, kind of like acceptance and commitment therapy. And what I love is the fact of the therapy approaches are becoming more similar. There's all sorts of different, and if we're getting more evidence-based, actually, they will continue to get more similar and more similar. And when we get anxious, again, it's about, instead of I don't want to feel it, it's what's that part of me trying to tell me? Where does that come from? What can I learn from this? You know, instead of a moving away, it's a moving towards, you know, and that's what I, you know, so when you talk about what I would want for schools and colleges, it's all of this stuff, you know. So I work with schools, and I have two boys who are, you know, kind of like one at secondary school, one at primary school, and they are getting taught how, you know, what a proverbial tense is. I can't even say it. They're learning, you know, the area of a circle. They're learning, you know, about, you know, history and all sorts of things. But they're also in an environment that is competitive. You know, that is kind of placing worth on, you know, what score that you get or how fast you are. And it's not that there isn't a place for all of that, but the glue that binds all of that, that allows that, is how am I in relation to myself? How do I talk to myself? So when I'm doing sport, when I mess up at a penalty, when I'm doing drama, before I go and do a performance and get on stage, when I'm struggling with my spelling, when my friend has been mean to me, you know, when I've been mean to somebody, how do I talk to myself? And training that's what I would want to cultivate. And also the common humanity element to it. So if I have somebody in my class who's good at maths, brilliant. We need people who are great at maths, and they're in my class, and that's amazing. We've got somebody who gets, you know, during a degree, they always get a first for all of their, you know, kind of like things. I get a 2-2. They get a first. Brilliant, they're getting a first. Because maybe it's about sharing that and celebrating that, rather than, if you're in the category of getting a first, I'm better than other people, or if you're getting a 2-2, I'm rubbish compared to people. So there's something about the social glue that I do think that it'd be benefit to change, because the emphasis on the self all of the time, you know, kind of like the emphasis on the competitive side of things is problematic. But if I can see myself in you, and you're part of me, you know, and I'm part of you, because as we're having this conversation, we haven't met before, but we are interacting. If we can see ourselves as connected, experience ourselves as connected, then I think the world's a better place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly what I had when I had severe anxiety, that I felt worse comparing to other people, and I felt more distant. And then I realized that this can be also a source of connection. That but it was after like a long time of, you know, the start of anxiety. But step by step, I built this this sensitivity towards other people who suffer from anxiety, because I know it can be a real hell. So it's and it was and then I built this compassion towards myself, but first of all it was towards others, and then I felt that so it's maybe I can be compassionate also towards myself. But it was a long process, and I realized that in the society it will be even longer. It will be a long evolution.
Well, I think that again, it brings up in my mind some of the blocks that people think that if you're compassionate towards yourself, you're just going to surround yourself by candles and sit in a bath and eat cream buns and, you know, or say, I'm brilliant at things, I'm important. No, being compassionate is sometimes saying, come on, this is difficult. You know, kind of like, I've got your back, or it's understandable that this is, you know, anxiety provoking, but it means something to me. So therefore I'm going to do something. Sometimes it can be, you know, people think that it's all about soothing and calming, but, you know, some of the most compassionate acts that we can do for ourselves and for other people is to approach the difficult stuff, is to do something that we're scared of, is to feel really vulnerable, is to connect with our anger, you know, kind of like, is to cry, you know, it is turning towards it, you know. So it's, you know, again, it's very nuanced. So one of the questions that I ask myself quite regularly is, what do I need? You know, what would be helpful? What do I need? And that means that sometimes I need a break, and sometimes I need to clean my house. You know, sometimes I need to make that phone call that I'm dreading. You know, sometimes I need to laugh because I haven't laughed for a while, and put on a really silly, stupid film that I know that will make me laugh. You know, it's again, it's coming back to, you know, what do I need? What do I need?
Yeah. And sometimes we only ask ourselves a question: what will be easier? What what will be safer?
Yeah.
And that's that gives us this vicious cycle. What is really well described in your book, this you can, with this book, you can do your own analysis of your own strategies that can help you. That the goal of the strategies is to help you, but maybe they are not helping. They are doing some kind of damage. So compassion is also about being honest and towards ourselves. Yeah, it's about being very honest and very.
Yeah. So an example, you know, kind of like, you know, and maybe an extreme, some people would say, you know, kind of like, I've heard it said that, but, you know, we know that certainly in the UK, there's a lot of people who, young people specifically, who will cut themselves. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, and it can be seen as being attention seeking. You know, that's one of the, or it can be, or copycat, they're just trying to fit in, or, you know, something or other. There is an honesty in, number one, you know, kind of like sitting and thinking, what's this about for me? Or what is this about for this person? And thinking, you know, if it is to get attention, you know, that's quite an extreme thing that somebody's doing to get attention, you know. Or if it is to be part of the group, actually being part of the group is really important, and it's sad that people have to do things like that to be part of the group. So even in something that some people, you know, don't understand, you see it in headlines, why is this happening, you know, kind of like, why are young people cutting themselves? It's because there is a function in it. It might be to stop pain, it could be to distract, it could be to experience something when they're not experiencing. It could be because they're experimenting. So it's holding a space, a non-judgmental space with honesty, that we can look at something and then also be thinking, okay, you know, what do we hope to achieve out of it? Is there another way of achieving that? You know, kind of like, what are the positives? What are the negatives? You know, what else could happen? What else could somebody do? And but it is that honesty, I think, is it's a really nice way that you phrased it there. It's that taking a step back and really looking at all sorts of different things. Is that helpful? You know, is it not helpful? And I think in the book, what I hope to do is kind of like give the message that this takes time. You know, so of course, I've shared the things that have had to change for me, you know, kind of like they've been really important for me. I haven't put things in there that I think, well, yeah, it might be helpful to somebody, but I don't know who that is. I kind of like, I've put in the universal things that have been really important to me and important to the people that I've worked with and the school kids that I work with and all sorts of different things. But the idea that it's not about then rattling through it. You know, it's not about, right, I've got to do this, then I do this, then I do this. Now I've got to get angry. Now I've got to get anxious. Now I've got to, you know, kind of do some imagery. It is more of a life guide, you know, a thing that I come back to all of these different things all of the time. It's not something like, you know, you do it and that's it. I hope that people return to different aspects, and maybe parts of the book that they skipped over as something that they come back to, because we're all going to be learning throughout our lives. So if somebody gets to the end and then thinks, I need to go back, that's a good thing. You know, if somebody so many years later says, I only got to chapter 4, you know, kind of like, and now I'm going to go back because there's something calling me back to it. You know, I just think I liked the idea of when you give an opportunity to write a book, you're a conduit for lots of ideas, lots of thoughts, reflections, and you put them there, not for somebody to just go read all the way through, done, but actually as a guide, you know?
Yeah, and it's definitely is, not only for me. I shared the cover of your book on my social media several times because I was reading it, sometimes, you know, doing photos of some, you know, quotations. And there were lots of people contacting me with, you know, thank you for this book. I'm in the process of experiencing this book, not reading, but, you know, experiencing this book, and in this process of changing the relationship with myself. So it definitely is. And that's exactly how you describe it. It's like a lifelong process. And I can have a better relationship with my anxiety, but then, you know, there will be definitely one day when it will worsen again, because, you know, life will be harder. And you know, when I had a better connection with my anxiety, I discovered that there is lots of, you know, more stuff to look at. For example, my internal critic. You have a really nice chapter and nice exercises, experiences to do with your internal critic, with personalization of your internal critic. And I was like, that's what is waiting for me. Who is that person in my head that is talking to me in not so polite way? And what is the good intention of this, you know, this voice? Maybe there is some compassionate intention. So I know that I have lots of stuff to do still.
Yeah.
So
I think
thank you for this.
No, I love what you said then about, kind of like somebody saying that they're experiencing it.
Mhm.
Yeah, because again, going back to the original point about, some people experience CBT, kind of like, but some people it remains, as I said, it remains an intellectual thing, whereas to experience something, to be
Mhm.
able to approach it, and we're all work in progress.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for this conversation. And and thank you for the book. I will show you again the cover. It's all like in my notes, and I always write on my book, so it's all in my purple ink. Yeah, you cannot see it. It's here, my purple ink everywhere. And I definitely will give this book to my children when they will be grown enough to because right now they are maybe too little, but I think it's amazing tool for teenagers as well.
Yeah, thank you. I would just like to say, when I received my copy or copies of the book, I can't read it. I am so, kind of like impressed when people are multilingual, kind of like, here you are, kind of like thinking, reading this, speaking such fluent English, kind of like, it's amazing. I can speak a little bit of different languages. That's a little bit just to get by. So I can't read it, but it's just beautiful. It's produced, I mean, like, just from the paper to the image on the front, the colors, it is really, really beautiful. And I felt like a gift, kind of like had landed on my doorstep when I got it. So even the little logo down here of the publisher, lovely, isn't it? It's like, oh, joy.
Yeah. Thank you very much again.
Oh,
We are waiting for another book. No pressure.
well, like myself and Elaine Beaumont have written the Kindness Workbook, which is a workbook for, kind of like young people.
Oh.
So that was specifically, the term compassion, when you're working with young people, people are, kind of like more talking about kindness.
Mhm.
And there is sometimes a kind of like a bit of a reaction to the word, compassion, but the currency they speak is kindness. So so we've done that one. So that's just kind of like, that was just out before, but it's about growing up and things.
Wow.
So yeah, I do like writing. So next one will be, there'll be something in the pipeline. And thank you for connecting in from your jungle.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah. Thank you very much. We are work in progress. That's what I'm really taking from this interview, and many, many more phrases that you shared, and your compassion also towards me, and your self-compassion, that is really inspiring.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will stop the recording.